Hello and welcome to the next video on how to prepare for your financial call. In this video we'll be looking over our labor trend report. So earlier we were doing our key indicator, we've moved on to the labor trend. Some of these numbers here that we're going to go over you'll find here on your key indicator report. So we're going to be investigating this, and then you can come back here and type in your notes here on the key indicator. Labor trend, this is basically your labor. It's your greatest expense usually for your month that you can really control, and so you really want to go over this. Here in the first column we have the wages all, wages without commission, wages per day, wages regular and overtime only, weighted average rate. So as you can see, it looks like I'm over by a lot over here. That I can explain away. We did a wage analysis here at my community because Oregon decided to increase its minimum wage immensely. So, we can look at that. So what I'm going to really focus on right now are my hours. That's something I can control. Is what are my budgeted hours? These are them right here in this column. November budget. First 15 days, second 15 days, it evens them out for you. This is your actual, this is what you actually worked, this is what you were supposed to work, and then this is your difference. So any negative, any reds, negative over here, we're going to want to take a look at. So here we go. This is for our hours regular plus overtime. Looks like my goal was 2,603. I was a little bit under, but then I was a little bit over the next month. But when you average these out, it looks like I was okay. Hours per day, they wanted it at 173.5. Looks like I was at 165 and 174. So I was, the first 15 days I was doing okay. The second I was a little bit over, and then you're going to want to know why. Well, this is November. What happens in the second half of November? We got Thanksgiving. We had a big, we call it a Thanksmas. It's our Thanksgiving and Christmas thing combined, and that's why we had the extra hours. So I'm going to want to write that in over here, my FTEs. So my full-time equivalents, looks like 23.1 is where I wanted to be. I was a little bit under, a little bit over for a positive average. So I can even explain that away. We had a holiday event in the second half of the month. Great. Now I've got my note. So if you're on your financial call and your regional asks you, why were you over? You can just have your note right there and explain it away. They've got a lot of financials communities to go over. They're not going to remember everything. They could research it themselves, but that's our job. So we're going to research it and have it for them, and not only that, but also tell them what we're going to do to fix it. Well, luckily we're not going to have another holiday party the next month because we combined ours, so that's something we can explain away. Overtime budgeted, even though we got a 2% budgeted, looks like I was over 3.13 and 3.39 of overtime. So why was the overtime so high? Well, we had the flu in our building, and we had a lot of call-outs due to having the flu. We had 5 of our residents had it, and a lot of our care staff got it, so I can write that in right here. Flu outbreak. Great. Got the notes there, so I'll remember for later. So now what you're going to want to do is just go through each department and figure out your hours. I'm not going to go through each department here on this video, but I will use an example of my dietary aid. So, not looking at wages, this is basically saying that as my wages, my average wages are a little bit higher than where they should be. My actual is up above because our minimum wage in Oregon increased, so we had to increase everybody's and bump them up. So that's why it's a little bit off here. But on my hours, that shouldn't affect no matter what I'm paying them. So I'm going to look in here and go, why am I working so many different hours? So this pink area is your budget. That's your goal. I'm supposed to have 150 hours. They worked 165, it looks like. That's 15 hours over. So I'm going to look at all of these red negatives and figure out what's going on. In this case, because of hindsight, I was able to go to my dietary manager and say, hey, our dietary associate hours were over 15 hours for the first half of November. What's going on? Like, what can we do to fix this? So come to find out, our dietary associate used to be a caregiver on the floor. Well, she covered a couple shifts because everybody was calling out, and they weren't adequately coded to caregiving. They just went to the kitchen. So I can explain that away. So covered caregiving shifts, not coded properly. Great. So now I have my note right there. So you're going to want to have that note and reasons of why the numbers are the way they are. Then you're going to want to go back to your key indicator report. This is what I do. So once I've figured out, we've got several numbers that show up on here that are on our that are on our labor trend report. FTE variance, weighted average rate variance, and overtime. So these three numbers we're going to find here in our labor trend. So we already went over the overtime. We had the flu. A lot of people were covering shifts. Our FTEs, we had our holiday party in the second half. That's why it was so high. Our weighted average rate, that means our weighted average of what we're paying. Well, that's a little bit higher than normal because we had a wage analysis and we had to increase some wages, so that's why it was up. So what I do is I have my notes here, and you can even leave them there, or you can even add them onto here. So when you're going through your labor trend, you can write your notes here of why the numbers are the way they are, and then explain them as you're going down. But then you also are going to want to tell them, but we'll go over it more in depth when we get to the labor trend. So once we get to the labor trend and we have everything filled out with all of our notes all the way up and down, then you can feel confident about moving on. But you're going to want to go through each department and figure out what's going on. And this usually takes time just because you're going to want to talk to your department heads. You as the ED, you don't want to put all of this on your shoulders. You want to manage it. So what you're going to do is if you're seeing an overage in your med techs, or if you're seeing an overage in your caregiving staff, you're going to want to go to your RSD or your wellness director, and you're going to want to work with them. You're going to say, okay, hey, look, this is how many hours we were budgeted to work. This is how many we worked. What's going on? And they might say, oh, well, this is the reason why. And you're going to want to kind of come up with an action plan of how to fix it so that the next month those numbers will improve. And it's really good on all of your financials to get each department head involved. They need to know what they're responsible for. You also need to celebrate with them the successes that they have. So when they do a good job, they need to know about it. When they need room for improvement, you need to let them know, because if you don't, they're not going to be able to improve, and it's going to come to a shock when they see that they're failing. So they're not going to know unless you tell them. So this is just a great tool to look at and to work with your department heads and find out how your labor is being managed according to your budget, your goal for that month. Also, if you have trouble understanding what some of these mean, just pull up your glossary, take a look. It's all in alphabetical order, and get a more in-depth definition of what these mean and how they affect. So sometimes the accountants, by your request, I think they all send them out. I know mine does. She'll send out the first half of the month right after the first half, and that way you can even make adjustments mid-month. So if you see for the first half of your month that a certain department is working over the hours that they should, sit down with that department head after your stand-up and just say, hey, look, it looks like we're over for the first half of the month. What can we do to fix it for the second half? And it's better to show progress that way than have it going the other way. So this is the labor trend and how it relates to your key indicator report. The next video we'll go over some of the other reports that are on the financial call.